Hello and welcome to Moonlit Reflections. This is a review series where I review games not only as a whole, but also talk about their individual facets and see how they measure up. Today I'll be reviewing Yakuza 0. Granted, Yakuza 0 has been out on the PlayStation 4 for a good while now, but luckily for those of us who game on PC, Sega decided to start bringing the series over to this platform. As such, the PC version is the one I'll be reviewing here. Also, Yakuza Kiwami is coming out around mid-February, so while this review is considerably late, I think it's still pretty well timed. At least that's what I'm going to tell myself, and you, I guess. So then, prepare to type weeb in the comments section, and or relax and enjoy yourself because off we go. Yakuza 0 is a prequel to the other 6 Yakuza titles that are in the main series. That is most likely the explanation for its name, after all. It focuses on a new Yakuza enforcer named Kazuma Kiryu, whose work collecting a debt from someone goes horribly wrong, and then he's framed for the murder of this person. He then ends up getting involved in a large conspiracy involving the Tokyo Yakuza and a tiny plot of land known as the Empty Lot, which turns out to be the key to many things going on in the city. While this is going on, though, we are introduced to another character, as this game has 2 main characters and we go back and forth between them every few chapters of the narrative. This man is Goro Majima, who is a banished Yakuza relegated to running a cabaret club. Despite what seems like a pretty decent life, though, he is desperate to get back into the Yakuza, and is contracted to kill someone to do so. This leads him into the same conspiracy as Kiryu, and the two have to go along their own paths, trying to handle their own challenges. There is actually a very deep storyline, but that is it in a nutshell. Yes, I know that decimal points are a bit odd in review scores, but to be honest, I figured, well, it's my review, I can do things how I want. Who cares if it's not typical? Anyway, Yakuza 0 does have great graphics, and they are enhanced by the fact that it's on PC and can handle higher frame rates along with the capability for higher quality textures, etc. Well, that is if you have a pretty high-end PC. Come to think, even middle-of-the-road PCs will get the job done pretty well. The specs for running this game are surprisingly low. I don't know if that's Sega not being huge on PC ports, or just the fact that it's not too difficult a game to run. Despite what this might leave you to believe, though, the graphics are nice. The character models, and especially the motion capture, is amazing. I'd say the character models and movement are really where the game shines. There is excessive detail being put into various fighting motions, and even the dancing motions for the disco side activity are amazing. Granted, it can be hard to see while you're looking at button prompts, but if you do bother to take a look, it's quite impressive. The only really part of the graphics is the fact that a lot of scenery assets are reused and have very little variation. For example, you'll see these same piles of trash a million times. The buildings are also not nearly as detailed as the characters. However, I'd say that's not entirely a bad thing. I realized GTA 5 did a way better job at making its world feel lively, and the scenery was amazing in it, but I'd say Yakuza's areas of Kamurocho and Osaka are pretty good too. They're nothing to write home about, of course, but they are authentic as far as people inhabiting them. Well, authentic except maybe for the fact that there are a ton of fight opportunities. The amount of thugs bothering innocents in broad daylight in the middle of the street, for example, will certainly test your suspension of disbelief. But, that's not too bad. They even have NPCs that stand outside with signs or handing out tissues, just like a real Japanese city. So, yeah, I'd say the attention to detail is certainly worthy of praise, though the scenery itself isn't anything that'll push graphics tech. The point, though, is that it looks very nice, and the city works well as the game's setting. Oh, and speaking of graphics, the cutscenes may be worth mentioning here. Honestly, it's hard to know where to put this bit of information. The cutscenes in Yakuza 0 have fully rendered, beautifully done scenes that are voice acted with their own set of subtitles. Then there's the in-engine cutscenes that are still fine, but not as detailed as the fully rendered ones. The actors don't move so much, and you get the same dialogue boxes that you would in any other part of the game. Then they have these somewhat strange stylized cutscenes thrown in every now and then. They're not able to be advanced similar to a fully rendered cutscene and feature very limited movement. They look nice, so I don't think it's quite a cop-out exactly, but I also don't fully understand their purpose. I suppose them looking nice helps it though. So, yeah, the game's graphics are lovingly crafted, I'd say. And while graphics aren't the most important thing, I think a realistic graphic style in a game that is set in a real-world sort of environment definitely benefits from this sort of stylistic choice. I would say the best part of this game's sound is the voice acting. There's only one version of the audio as well, as there is no dubbing into English or any other language, which, come to think of it, that's pretty rare. Anyway, the main story is fully voice acted, whereas smaller sub-stories and minor characters just get a few phrases here and there. It's a bit odd, and honestly I think it might be better to not bother with the voices for side characters and sub-stories, but I also don't think it's a totally negative thing. Meanwhile, the ambient sounds of the city are pretty realistic. People yelling out to you, talking to each other, reacting if you shove them, etc. It all helps to make Kamurocho and Osaka feel a lot more interesting. The musical score, while nothing amazing, also fits in quite well with the game. And of course, we get some fitting 80s disco songs on the soundtrack to really bring the disco side activity alive. Overall, I'd say the sound works with the game quite well. The gameplay of Yakuza 0 is largely a beat-em-up style. The story itself gives you plenty of enemies to fight, as well as you getting random encounters of a kind on the street. You can run away from them and duck into a building if you like, though, so they're not quite as bad as random encounters in old-school JRPGs. However, it does sort of take place in its own area. A crowd forms and gives you only a certain amount of space to fight in, and once the fight has actually begun, you can't run away. Each character has 3 main combat styles to choose from, as well as a hidden style that can be unlocked through certain criteria. You are also able to pick up weapons around the environment, or buy them and equip them later. However, weapons have a set durability, and will break after a while. You're also able to use things such as cars, walls, and other parts of the environment to your advantage if your heat meter, which is the meter below your health, is filled to at least 1 level. As you can see and imagine, there are plenty of ways to wreak havoc and hurt anyone who dares cross our anti-heroes? Anyway, besides the beatdown fest that happens while progressing through the story, there's also a big side quest for each protagonist. Kiryu has the real estate side quest, which is mostly just buying properties and trying to get agents who will help you manage them. Meanwhile, I'd say Majima's big side quest has more of a mini-game feel to it. You run a cabaret club where you have to assign hostesses to tables based on what each customer wants. You even collect them and level them up. In fact, you can even gather some from the city, just like the agents in Kiryu's side quest. Speaking of which, the city has about 1 million things to do in it. There are sub-stories that range from downright silly to emotionally touching, as well as plenty of side activities like disco dancing, karaoke, bowling, and a ton more. Yakuza 0, like pretty much all Yakuza games, is a completionist's worst nightmare. There are tons of achievements in the game, some story-related and easily missable, as well as many based on all these side activities in the game world. So yes, not only do you have the dramatic main story, as well as beating up tons of people to take out aggression, but you also have a whole plethora of mini-games that can range from great fun to frustrating as all hell. The game will have at least one thing to occupy your time, I imagine. While it might seem quite silly and superfluous, especially contrasted with the dramatic main story, it just wouldn't be Yakuza without it. And even if it's a prequel, it holds to tradition. Yakuza 0 is quite the eclectic game, like pretty much every one in the series. Yes, I know on the surface it's about hardened gangsters wanting to kill each other, and various people wanting to rule Japan's underworld. But hey, there's hostess clubs and arcade games! I know it's an extremely strange mix for anyone who isn't used to the series. Hell, even for those who are used to the series, it's kinda strange. However, as odd as it is, I actually think it works. The side activities don't get in the way of the intriguing storyline or beat-em-up action. They're simply there if you need a breather, or just want something interesting to do. The graphics of this new PC release, while not perfect, do certainly help bring the game to life in what I hope is a new birth for the series on the PC. As I mentioned, Yakuza Kiwami, or the remake of the first Yakuza game, is coming to PC. I do hope that means Kiwami 2 and others will come to PC eventually as well. Besides that, though, the game is by no means perfect, but I believe it's completely worth the asking price. I'd also recommend it if you're a newcomer to the series, since chronologically, this is the earliest game in the Yakuza timeline. So, if you're a hardcore PC gamer who doesn't own a console, and or you haven't tried the other Yakuza games, then this is a great starting point. There's not really much else to say. It's worth the price of admittance, and if you like it, you'll have a good few hours of fun. All things considered, I'd say it's a solid piece of gaming. And that's about it. This review took a lot longer than expected due to health issues and everything. Though, as of writing this line, Yakuza Kiwami still hasn't come out yet, so I consider myself more or less on time. Maybe. Okay, no. Sorry. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video nonetheless. Please feel free to comment, leave any feedback, and subscribe for more gaming stuff. And if you're really awesome and generous, you can donate with the links in the description. Hope to see you soon, and take care.